I guess start recording. All right. Hi, everyone. Welcome to session two of day three of our AANHPI Caucus Virtual Summit. My name is Ankita. I'm the AANHPI Caucus Chair for this term, and I'd love to introduce Adith Mehta, who is from Illinois and will be leading us into this next session. I would love for him to introduce himself and then get into what he plans on talking about. Thank you.
All right. Hi, everyone. My name is Adit. I'm a freshman from Illinois, and I'll be giving a talk about AA and HPI stereotypes, the good, the bad, and the ugly about them. So we're going to cover here on this next slide. My internet connection is a little bit unstable, so if it doesn't change, just let me know. So we're going to cover a little bit about what AA and HPI stereotypes are, how we can actually oppose these stereotypes, and then we're going to take a look at a couple examples of people who have gone against the norm like this. And then if time permits, we're going to do a little bit of a discussion activity at the end. All right, so let's first start off with what a basic definition of a stereotype is. According to Google, a stereotype is a widely held but fixed and oversimplified, that's a keyword, oversimplified image or idea of a particular type of person or thing. So essentially, what a stereotype does is take an idea that doesn't apply to everyone, and guess what it does? It applies it to an entire group of people. And while it may represent one like subgroup, it often doesn't show the full picture, which can result as like a form of racism that embraces the idea of classifying people under one norm. And for people who don't have experiences that identify with that norm, it can end up detrimentally impacting them and excluding them from the groups that they are in. All right, so I thought that this statistic was particularly eye-opening. This was from the Pew Research Center, and essentially it tells us that 63% of Asian adults encountered at least one person who thinks that math or science in their day-to-day life. Now, that stereotype is something we'll cover later. It's something called the model minority stereotype. But the fact is that stereotypes are not just something that exists, but there's something that you come across but in your day-to-day life, especially for certain groups such as Asian adults and other people in the AANHPI community. And I think this quote also sums it up really well, how these kind of stereotypes can impact you and your relationship with other people. I'll give you guys, I won't read it right off the slide here. I'll give you guys maybe a couple seconds just to read it and kind of digest what it's saying. All right, so essentially, again, this quote is derived from the model minority stereotype, and it's basically that Asian American people, especially, they have to be absolutely perfect. They have to be the best in the room, no matter what, go to the best colleges, get the best job possible, and something like that can be extremely pressurizing on many different communities. And again, we'll cover that on this next slide. So we're gonna now look at a little bit of a couple of the common stereotypes that you will see, and by no means is this all of the stereotypes that exist, but it's some that you will regularly see possibly. So the first one is the tiger parents stereotype. And I will admit that this one is not completely untrue, but it is the fact that AA and HPI parents are extremely strict on their children. They want them to have the best grades, do the best, and that is the stereotype. And while for our culture, it's not exactly wrong. Our culture does prioritize like the best academics possible and to do as well as you possibly could. It doesn't, like I said before, it doesn't represent the full picture necessarily. While A and HPI parents want their students to do the best they possibly can, in this day and age, they're actually becoming more supportive and understanding, especially Asian Americans. They're beginning to realize that you don't have to be the best at math or science. You can do fine arts, you can do theater, which is something that I personally do. You can do art, anything like that. But because this stereotype exists already, it can kind of instill the idea among young AANHPI youth that their parents are doing something wrong, that their parents are being too strict on them. And while maybe in a couple select cases that can be true, again, it does not apply to like the full picture. And because of that, a relationship like this can be tarnished because of stereotypes like this. So while AANHPI parents do want their kids to do the best, they are becoming more understanding and supportive of them, which is something that we really need to recognize. All right, so the next one is something that I actually had not thought about before, but it really is a stereotype, and it's the fact that many people identify AANHPI people as either Chinese or Indian. And I don't believe that this is necessarily from the fact that they're, my bad, that they're purposefully doing it, but it's that they're just like ignorant in a way. And because of that, we lose a lot of diversity from many of the different cultures that we have in Asian America, in the Pacific Islands, and many, many other places. So by mischaracterizing AANHPI people as Chinese or Indian, we're losing a lot of diversity in places that could use a lot more of it. So what we need to do is kind of get rid of that stigma and kind of start to see that people are not just one way or another. There's so much in between. And this is the next one is the one I covered, and probably the most common among Asian Americans, AANHPI people, whatever. It's the model minority stereotype. And it's the idea that AANHPI people are always going to be good at math, at science, and they're not creative. They don't pursue like creative jobs like that. And again, this is kind of something that comes from our culture that we do prioritize academics overall. But again, AANHPI youth people, they are people just like anyone else. They don't have to be good at math or science. They can be good at literally anything they set their mind to, like I've said right here. But because we have such a stereotype that you have to be the best, that you have to get into the best programs or get into the best colleges to necessarily be Asian, it puts so much pressure on these kids that they need to prove themselves, that they need to do the best in their class no matter what. And I think that this image right here, it summarizes that kind of idea perfectly, that pursuing that kind of perfection, the perfect Asian student, is not necessarily what is best for you. But now I'd like to kind of ask some people from the group maybe to open up a little bit about their experience, not necessarily with these stereotypes, but just any stereotype that you have encountered in your day-to-day life or whatever.
If y'all want to raise your hand to unmute, go for it.
Yeah, I'll chime in. I think I've pretty well experienced the model minority idea. Definitely seeing how, I guess, my own life, I guess a lot of my youth was focused around math and like studying like math comps, etc. I think a lot of that like carries on into like how I am now, where although those values of like hard work are good to have, I definitely see how some of the negative consequences of especially being so focused into one thing kind of hurt my overall youth.
Yeah, definitely. And I want to emphasize that while that the model minority stereotype does seem really good on the surface and that it holds Asian people to a higher standard than it would most. But in the end, it can have a very detrimental impact on some younger kids. And it can actually, if any of you were at Anya's presentation yesterday, which was really great, she kind of emphasized how the model minority stereotype was used to push other people down and used to show that if one minority could succeed, then all of the others could. So while it seems really good on the surface, it has a lot of underlying detrimental impacts. If anyone else doesn't have anything to say, I will move on.
I can
Okay.
jump in here and being honest real quick. I think this goes on your point with the model minority and the arts. I'll be honest here. It comes from other people and myself as well. Unfortunately, more if I see an Asian American person in the arts, like let's say theater or speech or even in policy, like we are right now, my mind may sometimes is a bit more skeptical of them than maybe non-Asian people. And I think that's something that I think came from my upbringing in like a very predominant Chinese community. A lot of people I knew there especially when we were being taught in like our immersion schools or like on Saturday schools, it's always surrounded around STEM, around those type of things, and anything arts related was left out completely. So whenever I see, other Asian Americans evolving themselves into those type of things, it isn't, I guess, intrinsically it feels less natural than it should, which is not great, obviously, but I'm just being honest.
No, definitely. I've felt the same thing, the same exact thing that you have felt. Sometimes I can be judgmental, but you have to recognize that, like I said, Asian American people, AANHPI people, they are people above anything else, and that they can set their mind to really do anything else that any other group of people is doing. And I think to when we kind of break down that perception that we have to be the best, that we can't be creative, then that's kind of when we can integrate a little bit more and embrace more diverse perspectives. All right, so while all of these, this is not working. All right, so while all of these stereotypes can seem kind of bad, there are definitely ways to address them. And like I said, if you were at Anya's presentation yesterday, she kind of brought it through a piece of like legislation. She talked about how there are case studies, civil rights legislation, and just general legislation during the COVID era or way before about how it could be addressed. I kind of want to take it from a little bit more of an individual day-to-day approach. So I think there are five main steps, and this will all kind of form into something that you'll see at the very end. There are five main steps that people can take to really address stereotypes. So the first one is to pay attention. So you need to kind of see how do your actions garner a reaction from other people, or how do other people's reactions garner or how do other people's actions garner a reaction from you, and how stereotypes in general can just impact the way you view the world. The next one is to acknowledge your assumptions. So, one way that you can do this is to think about in what ways do you view people from different groups? Do you view them in a different or similar way than they do themselves? If you can at least acknowledge that they're there, then that's a big step to actually making a difference in your communities and in your perception in your day-to-day life. So the next piece to do is to actually understand your perspectives. So this is why do these stereotypes, so how do these stereotypes impact your view and why do they truly do that? And by an extension, do they give you a positive or negative outlook of a group that you wouldn't normally have if that stereotype was not already kind of ingrained into your perception of other people? And now that you've fully understood your perspective, or at least mostly understood it, and know what the weak or what the positive and negative points of it are, then you can go out and seek different perspectives. So while you may view something one way, many other people are sure to view it a different way. So consider how might your perspective be different, and then go and ask others how they perceive people around them, how they perceive different groups compared to you. Are they is their perception similar or different? And then the final step is to examine your options. So now that you know all this information, you understand your own perspective and you understand other people's perspective, refer back to your original actions and know what can be done to actually change your choice. Would you have made the same choice knowing the information about stereotypes that you know now? So how would your actions be similar or different from what they were? And you'll notice that each highlighted letter here, like the letter E, forms the acronym PAUSE. So pay attention, acknowledge your assumptions, understand your perspective, seek new perspectives, and then examine your options. And if you do this, you can apply it to a bunch of different things. You can apply it to tell or to educating people about their awareness of stereotypes that impact others around them. You can even bring it to a legislation point of view, where through your observations, you can craft legislation that changes the status quo in some way, shape, or form. But pause is just something that you should generally use in your day-to-day life. There are many other tactics, but I found that this one was one of the easiest and best ways to actually change the community and perception of people all around you. So now we're going to look at AANHPI change makers, the people who've really gone out there and made a difference. So the first one you probably all know is Yo-Yo Ma, the iconic cellist who is probably the most famous, not just now, but of all time. And I chose him not just because he's such a good cellist and does music, but because he was literally the perfect Asian student. And I say that in quotes because there is no perfect Asian student, but he was technically the perfect one because he literally went to two Ivy Leagues. He went to Harvard and Columbia, and he ended up dropping out of Columbia to pursue music of all things. Like, I cannot think of someone who went against that Asian model minority stereotype more than Yo-Yo Ma. But because of the fact that he pursued something that he really wanted to do, that got him to the success that he has today. But he's also used his impact to make a big change in the world. He's actually a United Nations Messenger of Peace and a board member of the World Economic Forum. And he does all of this so that he can spread diversity and culture and create more awareness around that culture. And when we do that, we can actually kind of get rid of those stereotypes that exist in our day-to-day lives and create a more safe place and environment for AA and HPI people. So I thought that Yo-Yo Ma was a great example of someone who went against the norm and succeeded nevertheless. The next one, you guys probably may be very interested in this one. Her name is Mina Fedora, actually. And she was just a middle schooler when she started to make like colossal change in her communities and just across the United States in general. So as a middle schooler, she founded the organization AAPI Youth Rising, which is a group dedicated to like Yo-Yo Ma, spreading the awareness of culture and diversity all throughout the United States. And her efforts have even brought her all the way to the White House and to speak in front of President Biden, which is pretty impressive for someone who just got out of middle school and was just like a freshman in high school when she did that. And she also did something called the 1/180 pledge, which was essentially that out of every 180 school days, that one of them should be dedicated to AA and HPI culture and to educating students about that. Because if we can teach our youth about that, then in the future we'll create a much more diverse and welcoming society. And if you guys want to check out her website, I have a QR code, and some of you may be interested in looking into that. They have a lot of great opportunities for AAPI people, so just let me know if you want me to go back to that. And then the final people that I want to kind of recognize here are Kevin Tien and Tim Ma, sorry. They founded the group Chefs Stopping AANHPI Hate, and they did this during the height of the coronavirus pandemic because during COVID-19, they saw a ton of AAPI backlash. They saw a ton of hate there. So what they did is they started offering dining experiences that would kind of teach people who ate the food about AA and HPI culture. And you'll notice kind of a common trend across all these people that they used their impact and their influence to spread more awareness and to kind of get rid of the stereotypes or at least fight back against them in the status quo. Their efforts actually led them to raising 500K in just 2022 alone for small AA and HPI businesses that faced large-scale hate during the pandemic and afterwards. And while it's not mentioned on the slide, they also have many chapters in places like New York, Detroit, San Francisco, I believe, and many other places. And then I also have a QR code here to their website if you guys want to take a look at that. All right, so now it's your turn. I want you guys to recognize that those guys are not the only AA and HPI change makers. All of you, just even by getting into this call and hearing a little bit about it, all of you are AA and HPI change makers. So using pause, actually, I want you to, or I would at least like a couple of people to maybe speak out if they're comfortable about how they can use an acronym like this. It doesn't even have to be pause. It can be literally anything about how they can just in their day-to-day lives go against AA and HPI stereotypes and kind of spread that awareness and culture around.
If you would like to, feel free to raise your hand. Huh? If not, that's totally okay. I can go. Okay, so I think a really interesting scenario to put this through would probably be our perceptions of like immigrants specifically. We like to characterize immigrants as criminals, as terrorists, as people we do not want in the country. Yet, if we really paused and thought about every single person that's in the United States, we were all immigrants once, unless you're indigenous. And even like the person who would say, "Oh, I'm American through and through." No, girl, you were like British 10 generations ago. Don't don't make stuff up. So obviously all of that to say that you could use this framework in terms of questioning your own perceptions on immigration or other human rights issues in which you might not have a strong enough of an opinion on before.
Yeah, definitely. Pause is something that can not just be used for other people, but it can be used for our own perceptions. I will admit that some stereotypes have kind of, I think we all maybe know of at least some stereotypes, and I know some stereotypes have definitely impacted the way I kind of view other people, especially AA and HPI people. But I feel that using a framework like this in our day-to-day lives and just kind of seeing that that stereotype or any kind of stereotype is an oversimplification of what the actual truth is, then I believe that that's one of the biggest steps we can take to actually creating a more diverse and friendly world and society. Okay, so if anyone else does not have anything to say, then that is the end of my presentation. Thank you guys so much for listening. I appreciate all of your comments actually about the stereotypes that you guys have faced. So thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you so much, Adit. It was a pleasure hearing from you. And thank you for hosting our session 2 of day 3 of our NHPI Caucus Summit.